Pour commencer cet après-midi, on va vous écouter Sarah Kenderdine. On a évoqué ce matin les aspects sociétaux, le rapprochement communautaire dans l'espace muséal, l'expérience commune. Avec vous, nous allons réfléchir à la place du numérique dans le champ de réflexion des musées. Vous êtes professeur à l'EPFL, vous enseignez la muséologie numérique. Vous êtes directrice du laboratoire de muséologie expérimentale, directrice et conservatrice principale de l'EPFL Pavillon. C'est l'espace de convergence de l'art et de la science à l'EPFL. Vous avez créé plus de 80 expositions et installations dans le monde entier en questionnant à chaque fois cette expérience muséale nouvelle. Et on vous écoute.
Thank you very much. I'm the post-lunch entertainment. And my topic is the transformative power of digital museology, and it goes to the heart of power relations in museums, centering on issues of knowledge systems, democratic access, and community engagement, all through the affordances of computational tools. The primary research framework that I'm developing in my laboratory using digital strategies, I call computational museology. Computational museology provides a scaffold that unites machine intelligence with data curation, ontology with visualization, and communities of publics and practitioners with embodied interaction through immersive interfaces. This framework is designed to empower cultural organizations to link all forms of culture and materiality, objects, knowledge systems, representation, and participation. But let me first set the stage for this new kind of museology. To do so, we need to revisit how power in museums has always been instrumentalized by new technologies and new ways of seeing. Theorists such as Tony Bennett connects the work of the earliest museums to those of the ambitions of the world exhibitions in the 19th century, such as the 1851 Great Exhibition in Britain depicted here. These shows work to render the whole world as represented in assemblages of commodities subordinate to the controlling vision of the spectator. Museums evolved in modern nation states as institutions whose hold over their publics depended on their voluntary participation through specular dominance. And the architecture and the installation of the world's fairs, even today, are an ongoing search for the spectacular effects of its own visual landscape, along with the search for spectacular effects upon its visitors. Stereoscopy, for example, which emerged in the 19th century with its seemingly miraculous ability to produce illusion, was tangible proof of the industrial achievements of the time and central to the preservation of these early universal exhibitions and ultimately to the democratization of knowledge through virtual travel. And thus we observe through the history of optical devices that early museographic forms were all part of the architectonic information spaces whose images and relationships excited public-private curiosity and opened into new worlds of knowledge. Moving on from the 19th century, by the 1930s, the challenges posed by emerging technologies of the time precipitated a call for a radical rethinking of the relationship between exhibition spaces, exhibits, and the spectator. The idea of temples dedicated to the cult of the authentic or auratic object seemed outdated to many. The media reality itself was thought to be transforming the museum into something available to everybody. Theorists and critics often felt they were standing on the museum's ruins, influenced by André Malraux's famous idea about the imaginary museum without walls, presented in 1947. In an aligned scientific revolution, Vannevar Bush, the American engineer and scientist, conceived the MEMEX, a new nonlinear system for storing and retrieving data. According to media archaeologist Erkki Huhtamo, the ideas of Malraux and Bush combined to take us to the gates of the virtual museum. The museum inside the telephone network from 1991 was arguably the first exhibition that did not rely on any physical space. The show was accessible to home users through networked communication devices such as a telephone, the fax, and computer networking. The show was organized by the Intercommunications Center for the Japanese telco NTT. It was designed to investigate the possible ways communication networks could impact the museum as an institution. The list of contributors to this early exhibition is really noteworthy. Laurie Anderson, J.G. Ballard, Pierre Boulez, Ryoichi Sakamoto, Jean Giono, William Forsyth, William S. Burroughs, Merck Cunningham, John Cage, Jacques Derrida, Allen Ginsberg, Philip Glass, Felix Guattari, Jarek Jarman, Jeff Koons, Steve Reich, Paul Virilio, John Zorn, and more. So this was obviously a transformation of the museum that was worth being part of. Museums, of course, have gone on to colonize the internet, but this is not a history that I intend to pursue today, because for me, the real transformation still remains on the gallery floor, the last bastion of curatorial authority, where public-defined, participatory, and emergent narratives are at their most challenging. Many innovators in early forms of immersive experiences from the 1960s onwards believed that spatialized multisensory embodiment would enhance the capacity and speed of the human mind and cognition. Fast forward, it was the former CEO of Intel, Brian Krasnick, who declared in 2014, we're in the midst of a transformation from a world of screens and devices to a world of immersive experiences. Media art history and media archaeology allows us to come full circle, however. What he was really observing was hundreds of years of development in these prosthetic architectures of the senses. From the Kaiser panorama to the sensorama, the emergence of immersive environments coincided with the sublimation of curatorial praxis inside machines and represented the greatest challenge to the passive viewer since the invention of the roller coaster. And it is this that I aim to address in my speech. So for 25 years, I've been designing large-scale, immersive, interactive public interfaces for engagement with cultural heritage, initially at Museum Victoria. I then started to work with universities to help sustain this research and its infrastructure at the forefront of computer graphics. I co-established the Applied Laboratory for Interactive Visualization and Embodiment in Hong Kong with 8 large-scale systems, and then returned to build the Expanded Perception and Interaction Center at UNSW. So just so you know what you're looking at here on the right-hand side of the screen, a full 7-meter diameter panorama. It's comprised of 56 projectors and a 29 computer cluster. So just as a reference, this is 60 times the resolution of your average head-mounted display or goggles, typically used for metaverse applications. So it's at the edge of human visual acuity, and it was designed to solve visualization problems for complexity and big data in the humanities and the sciences. This is our partner laboratory in Hong Kong, the world's first 360-degree 3D LED system, and our lab for experimental museology at EPFL. We have 12 large-scale systems. They offer us strategies for multisensory engagement, emphasizing human-to-human as well as human-to-machine interaction, and give us powerful ways to reformulate narrative in a digital context. We harness technologies that have unprecedented abilities to capture the world around us. Laser scanning, for example, collects billions of points to represent places, such as these heads at Mount Rushmore, scanned by the Scottish 10. We can create precious objects in 3D and peer inside to see what was previously unseen. We can also capture art with linear line scanning in a way that allows us to zoom into the tiniest brushstroke and reveal more than the naked eye can see. Machine learning and photogrammetry are a big moment in developments here. This is the photogrammetric model of Nefertari's tomb, collected in only 8 hours of photography, one guy, one camera. And machine learning is used to create a model of billions of points, and then it's transferred to our 360 3D system at 40 million pixels, one-to-one scale, as the world's first demonstrator of Unreal Engine's end display. And we also work with what's so-called intangible cultural heritage through various forms of motion capture, motion analytics, motion ontologies. So after that somewhat lengthy introduction, these are the topics that I'll explore with you today: computational archives, cultural imaginaries, heritage at risk, digital twins, deep maps, embodied knowledge systems, and art and science. They're all interwoven with the issues of public access and interpretation. So we live in a world where the tools for searching in archives remain rooted in archival conventions of grammatocentrism, where expert knowledge is the key to entry. Access and engagement with the vast majority of databases continues to rely on these text-driven single searches. The computational revolution, however, offers a paradigm shift for museums, where archives become a new terrain on which curators will reckon with heritage materiality and calculate and define new fine-grained archival ontologies and narratives. One example here is based on EPFL's seminal Montreux Jazz Archive digitization project. It's a UNESCO-listed Memory of the World archive. Jazz Luminaries is a constellation of jazz greats from the archive. The installation cuts, remixes, and replays 5,400 artists and 13,000 videos from a total archive of 11,000 hours of video. The neural net-like image that you see here represents the social network of the artists, and the clustering between the nodes is based on the number of times one artist played with another artist. So it's in fact B.B. King who lies at the very center of this dense spaghetti. Visitors lie under the dome, and they use a spherical interface to navigate inside this constellation, emulating the hemisphere of the full dome in which it's staged. And the search paradigm is not through text typing, not through expert knowledge. It's like tuning a radio, searching by listening. It circumvents the lack of public knowledge into who the jazz greats actually are. Hearing what you like drives the design to unfold in 3 layers: a sample, all songs, full song. Very retro 1970s graphics. So many European archives comprise hundreds of thousands of hours of material, and museums are often the custodians of this. The rush to preserve rapidly decaying physical film has presented us with a new crisis, and that is one of public access. The potential for accessing audiovisual archives has been massively overestimated, and it's compounded by issues of lack of infrastructure and expertise in how to deal with these vast archives. In Switzerland, there are wonderful organizations established to safeguard Swiss audiovisual cultural heritage and to improve public access: Phonothèque, Cinémathèque Suisse, and Memoriave. However, estimates reveal that of the more than 2 million hours held in the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation archive, of which nearly 100% impressively has been digitized, public access is below 5%. So in Narratives from the Long Tail, which is an SNF Swiss grant, we're developing interactive visualization frameworks for 200,000 hours of archival video from 4 major collections in Europe, including the International Olympics Collection, Swiss TV and Radio, and the Eye Museum in the Netherlands. Machine learning and computer vision, these are the tools of artificial intelligence, are used to create narrative coherence across the spatial, temporal, social, affective, and aesthetic vectors in these massive archives. Our 360-degree 3D narrative visualization engine becomes a scalable and participatory model aimed to situate audiences and their experience at the center of knowledge production, while also stimulating innovation in archival practices. Great humor of the day. This is the Biograph and Mutoscope collection from the Eye Museum. Very, very high resolution, earliest film archive in the world. So we also know at most major museums only a fraction of the collection is on display, and the majority of the treasures are hidden from view. Smithsonian, it's 2%. British Museum, 0.4%. Museum Victoria, 0.85% of 16 million objects on display. And this is a massive data browser that we made for the museum, which own a 360 3D system. It's 100,000 objects that can be interactively accessed, examined at one-to-one scale, and connected together. It's important to note in this project that it was an export from the content management system, so it only took 15 minutes to get the material. We then connect across silos of different themes in social history, indigenous material, and the natural sciences. These are normally separated in the museum, and link them all together using metadata. You can zoom into images. It creates a wordle of the description. You can access the original record. You can fly in the Z-axis as far as the eye can see, and it's temporally distributed per theme. This is no search engine, again, so it's serendipitous browsing, and it's a new paradigm for opening up the museum storehouse and creating these shared playgrounds for exchange and interaction. An interface without a text-based search function, it operates more like a real-time curating machine where you'll always be confronted with the unexpected. Returning to the technologies of the 19th century, Stereo Spectacular is an example that leverages the vast archive of historic stereographic images found in collections throughout the world. And in this case, we're focusing on the Universal Exposition, 1867. Always attuned to spectacle, Napoleon III, the French emperor, instigated 1867 in Paris. It was designed with an innovative iron palace and included over 100 national pavilions in a vast park on the Champ de Mars. The fair marked a turning point in visual culture. Far from being a traditional display of manufactured goods and natural resources, it mobilized contemporary technologies in the service of history and museography in order to create an immersive visitor experience that was a sensation at the time. The gigantic elliptical palace was arranged as a panoptical machine, and the fair brought together approximately 50,000 exhibitors from 32 countries and attracted over 11 million visitors in 8 months. We've curated over 1,000 stereo slides from collections worldwide. The American writer Olivia Wendell Holmes coined the term stereograph in 1859 and wrote most evocatively about the visual effects from stereo vision systems. He described the tactility of stereopsis. By means of these two different views of an object, the mind, as it were, feels around it and gets an idea of its solidity. We clasp an object with our eyes, and then we know it to be something more than just a surface. And our reconstitution of this archive, computer vision techniques are used to correct all the stereo pairs for the archival record, rectification for projection, removing of artifacts, denoising, defect correction, and upscaling for high fidelity. We undertake recoloring in select cases, and advances in computer vision also hint at the possibility for fully reconstructed scenes with navigable geometry. The movie depicted here is a wireframe of the exhibition architectures, and through historical research, each one of the images is now geolocated to its correct position in the fair. Stereo Spectacular is part of exhibitions for Paris and Washington starting in 2026, so this is a preview. In 1867, it was the moment that the Americans came on the world stage just post-Civil War to claim their power and prowess in industrial manufacturing and establishing them as a global superpower. So this global event put in motion an unprecedented play of mirrors, and delegations came from all over the world. And to augment the archival display, the stereo images will have sonified the global voices through commentaries written in the day. And our exhibition, of course, juxtaposes real objects with this virtual real-time panorama. It's designed to critique issues of colonial dominance and exploitation that are clearly visible throughout this show and through witness and diverse cultural interpretations. According to Jonathan Crary, stereography played down its operative mechanism within the shell of the display itself, thus enhancing its phantasmagorical nature. Likewise, for Walter Benjamin and others, the phantasmic attribute was assumed central to the visual culture of the mid-19th century through stereo affects. When the stereoscope became embedded in the interior of architecture of public spaces, in particular museums and traveling exhibits, the medium molded the Western world view. It made the global world more accessible, both physically and virtually. And as mentioned in the introduction, it was designed to shape a cultural imaginary around armchair travel. The post-processual archaeologist Christopher Tilley says kinesthetic approaches to landscape stress the role of the carnal human body. The way we perceive and relate to visual imagery is fundamentally related to the bodies that we have. The photographic historian Christopher Pinney describes corporeal embodied aesthetics, the way in which iconic images transfix their viewers, and embodiment theory informing presence theory is central to a digital encounter. So this is the image that was already shown once today, the dome of the former Prince of Wales Museum CSMVS. And it was adopted as the epicenter of an artistic exploration and specifically focuses on the ceiling architectures of Mumbai's heritage and contemporary buildings and transforms them into an urban celestial imaginary. Mumbai's architectural heritage is unrivaled in India. It's got the world's largest representation of grand neo-Gothic style architecture, numerous examples of Indo-Saracenic architecture, and one of the world's largest concentration of Art Deco buildings. We shot 168 gigapixel images throughout the city. Here is the Dr. Dajilad's museum, but also contemporary, the Terminal 2 at the Mumbai airport. It was staged in a dome that we bought from our lab, 6 meter wide, under the 60-foot ceiling of the museum, and allowed about 2,000 people a day to come and rediscover their city with fresh eyes. Open to all, it gave new perspectives on many of these spaces that are socially exclusive despite their public heritage status. And the work uses a computer vision algorithm that randomly selects any pair of images and creates a unique transition between them. So in effect, you can lie there all day and never see the same thing twice. The perceived hemispheric curvature of domes has been rendered architecturally by many cultures throughout the world and used to enfold the most sacred of environments, from Buddhist stupas and Jain temples to Islamic mosques and Christian cathedrals. Dome constructions are a place of ritual, communion, and transcendence. Early developments in dome projection theaters, such as this one, emerged from attempts to stimulate the spherical gestalt of the human visual field and were designed to exploit and extend sensory perception. And it is the psychological, sensorial, perceptual, and cognitive qualities of immersion that have driven many museums in the direction of virtual reality and so-called immersive experience today. In collaboration with the Anagu elders and the National Museum of Australia, we created 2 dome experiences for the songlines of the Seven Sisters. This songline portrays one of the most defining and predominant meta-narratives chronicled in ancient mainland Australia, but had never been told in the public domain until this exhibition. A very traumatic history of colonial contact made its custodians wary of disclosing details of sacred knowledge, and yet the songline was in jeopardy. And this project was 7 years in the making, from the day that the community asked for help to put their songline back together and into the public domain. The digital dome was chosen by the Matu artists and used for this project to simultaneously express the sphere of the world around us, the sky above and the ground below, enveloping viewers as they lie supine as these creation beings travel, leaving land formations in their wake, Cave Hill and the constellations, Pleiades and Orion, in the southern night sky. The first work involved photogrammetry of a sacred cave which had never had a photograph taken of it before, time-lapse photography, drone-based panoramas, gigapixel imaging, as well as ambisonics, allowing visitors intimate views of the stories contained within its sandstone folds. The second journey immerses visitors in the series of projected artworks of the songline made by the custodians. These are trust grass jumpy figures. It's a ceremony singing them off the land to their new home at the National Museum of Australia. Looks a bit like a morgue, really. We were able to make photogrammetric models. The artists painted a series of paintings of the songline in the full dome format, and these were then interpreted, quite complex narratives, led to a series of animated sequences in this exhibition. So this is a shot from the opening, and what was most important about this show was this lengthy gestation period of 7 years, which resulted in a curatorial and Indigenous relationship watershed in Australia. It was also a profound collaboration between the university sector, where infrastructure that I was able to support enabled these works to be built. I believe that it's one of the values for laboratories like mine is to help support innovation in the GLAM sector. The exhibition won numerous awards. It's touring all over the world. It was at the Humboldt Forum and closed at the Quai Branly in Paris. And most recently, the full dome work opened in India. Iconoclasm, looting, warfare, natural disasters, not so natural disasters, mass tourism, climatic catastrophe, they all act on cultural heritage with increasing devastation, and the digital remains the only mode of access in an era characterized by heritage at risk. We're now at the edge of the Gobi Desert in China at the Dongguan Caves. At the nexus of the Silk Road, this World Heritage Site had 492 caves carved into this escarpment. Inside, 45,000 square meters of painted frescoes and over 2,000 stucco statues. Crafted by Buddhist monks over a period of 1,000 years, this sublime art treasury is like nothing else in the Chinese Buddhist world. Most of these caves are closed to the public to ensure their preservation, and to perhaps repeat myself, the digital remains the only mode of visitation for this era of heritage at risk. An enormous preservation effort underway there, about 60 full-time photographers. Takes 3 months to digitize a single cave. The Pure Land projects, there were 5 of them, were designed to activate the kinesthetic spatial responses of their viewers and give us important insights into how interfaces operate in the museological domain. Originally conceived for Art Basel in Hong Kong, when it was the Hong Kong Art Fair, visitors hold these tablets. We print the wireframe from the laser scan on the walls of this exhibition booth at 1:1 scale, and they navigate with a window on this world. It has three noteworthy qualities: the way that it harnesses socialization around a single screen. At the core of the museological experience, it's not about giving everybody their own device. It's an interface for young kids, middle-aged ladies, grandmother and grandchild. Grandmother abandons the grandchild and takes off with the screen. Non-ageist systems, very important. And the third most noteworthy quality is that of virtual tourism. Here, the wife takes an iPad from her handbag and she's filming her husband's experience as if they were really there. It was reformed for a full dome shown at the World Economic Forum in Dalian, fully interactive, tours led for the WEF delegates, and here it is again in 360 3D. It's a single data set which has created 5 completely different exhibitions that have been seen by millions of people worldwide now. And it's the malleability of digital data that is its intrinsic quality. We can also observe the proliferation, if you like, of auras arising from the entanglement of the real and its digital double. Decades of computer science and engineering have revolutionized the tenets of verisimilitude and representation. The Terapixel Panorama project concerns a Swiss national icon, the painted panorama representing the Swiss Battle of Confederation of 1476, painted by the German artist Louis Braun in 1893, 19th century interpretation of a 15th century battle. It has great significance as it's part of the formation of the nation state and the formation and creation of Swiss national identity. Upon creation and completion of this panorama, it was displayed in a rotunda in Zurich and Geneva for a total of 7 years. It was then abandoned at the demise of that media format and the rise of cinema for mass entertainment. It was rediscovered in the 1990s, and a massive conservation effort began in 1997 over a 6-year period. It was then re-erected inside a panorama, and it was floated on the Lake of Murten in a box built by the French architect Jean Nouvel for the Swiss National Expo in 2002. And many of the people in the audience, I assume, saw that. Afterwards, it was returned to obscurity, and we recently rescued it from a military storage facility where it's been languishing for the last 20 years. The full length is 100 meters. Each of these 3 sections are 10 meters high, and they each weigh a ton each. We took it all to the laboratory. And we worked with a conservation team for a few months to do a full conservation effort on it. We built spare rolls and motorized platforms. It's a hyperbolic image, so it's not flat. And then we digitized it with an IXH 150 megapixel camera with a 72mm lens, generously sponsored by Phase 1. We built a motorized rig for this, which was able to travel the 10-meter vertical height of the painting. We stitched together 128,000 images to create a 1.6 trillion pixel image at 1,000 dpi. It turns out this is the largest image ever created in the world. But it's a big object, so it's sort of not rocket science. Superfine resolution allows participants in this work to zoom into more than the naked eye can see. And there are a range of 3D augmentations which we're busy with right now. So I'm showing a kind of preview of some of the material. We've made 3D objects, which I'm not going to show you, but I'll show you other things. Obviously, we're investigating the materiality of the canvas. 5 mil of painting fills the whole vertical height of our 360 system. We're developing a smell necklace which releases particular scents in real time. So you can imagine what the scents are or the smells are of this battle scene. So we're talking about blood, sweat, goats, horses, and so on. A real-time olfactory immersion. We're working with reenactment fighters. These are the HEMA crowd, the Italians. They're probably the best reenactment fighters from 16th century manuscripts. And we put them in a green screen studio, so we have volumetric video sequences to put inside the panorama. And we have a range of strategies for multi-sensory engagement. This is a 20-person magnifying glass, which allows you to, if you add your magnifying glass to someone else's, you get triple the zoom sort of thing. So I'm pleased to say that that exhibition is going to be all over Switzerland starting next year. Double Truth is a digital work based on seminal Buddhist artifacts from another project that I'll talk about briefly later, the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism. Participants rotate this human viewing platform, human scale viewing platform, and in circumambulation from left to right, generate dynamic temporal sequences that reveal each of the 15 sacred sculptures one by one. This is Avalokiteshvara coming from the National Museum in Colombo in Sri Lanka. The reverse rotation of the platform, however, reveals unexpected materialities, icons, fragment, melt, refold in a series of computer graphic transformations and parametric visualizations. And the properties of the digital and the geometries of the digital transcend the original visible and material properties of the object. And this is a meditation on the two truths from Mahayana Buddhism, which are to do with the mundane and the absolute. By reversing the platform again, you reinstate the object. This platform is part of a new SNF Indo-Swiss grant to create digital twins of over 100 seminal Buddhist sculptures in India and tour it. And it's also a blockchain work, so smart contract and blockchain work to give us new opportunities to both protect custodians and to share this material as these powerful, very powerful 3D objects are introduced into the networks. So this is an important aspect in how the digital twin is also used in repatriation debates. The theoretical framework for the next section lies in deep mapping or cartocriticism, how we reconceive interpretations of the map as moving, embodied, social, technical, and emotive, and as opportunities to present alternative visual solutions to the specific problems of depicting and describing places and time. Conceiving of maps through a deep mapping schema posits that they're never fully formed, they're never static, but emerge in navigational processes where everything is on the move. And the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism is based on the compelling story of the spread of Buddhism from India through the seaports of Southeast Asia and the South China Sea, supported by archaeological and historical evidence. This research and exhibition series has profound contemporary relevance to the socio-economic and political transformation of the world, while the far-reaching enterprises of Belt and Road reactivate the ancient overland maritime and trading routes. The Atlas counterbalances prevailing narratives which have neglected the importance of Pan-Asian maritime countries and Buddhist entrepreneurship in the expansion of trade from the 2nd century BCE to the 15th century CE. It's a complex story, so I'm not going to go into it. The spread of Buddhist doctrines from India to China triggered a profusion of cross-cultural exchanges that had a profound impact on Asian and world history. And it involved multiple societies, diverse groups of people, missionaries, itinerant traders, artisans, medical professionals, and so on. Our atlas starts in the rock-cut caves of India, and the fieldwork, which took place over 5 years, includes hundreds and hundreds of sites across 7 countries, thousands of locations recorded in ultra-high resolution 3D and panoramic and gigapixel imaging. We're shooting primarily on this camera. It's a Swiss camera, rotates in 360 degrees. Here you see the Shwagadam Pagoda at Yangon, one of the most revered sites in Burma. And a myriad of these different fieldwork techniques of gigapixel, analog, and digital panoramas. This is Ajanta Caves, many of you would be familiar with in India, one of the predominant Indian sites. But we're also recording a lot of contemporary practices where Buddhism in India is thriving from pilgrimage coming from the surrounding countries. So this is prayer time up in Bihar state. Ambisonic sound recordings for contemporary practices and photogrammetry of many of the really important sculptural material, Jayavarman VII from Angkor, held at the National Museum in Cambodia. So all of these materials were brought together in a touring exhibition and also a permanent exhibition at Fo Guang Shan Monastery. And it was open for 18 months and received 2 million visitors already. So we are now looking to double the size of this exhibition and finish the whole project. So classic exhibition making, of course, with all of the key narratives around architecture, text, the objects, and important monks themselves and the transmission. But then these new media elements, a 360-degree system that allows you to enter hundreds and hundreds of these sites, a series of eye domes. This is the rock-cut caves of India, where you can rotate your point of view, and then these spherical videos, Tiao Tong Temple in Ningbo in China. And then the 3D objects juxtaposed also with real objects. So the tension between the virtual and the real are staged in this exhibition with important treasures from Fo Guang Shan. There are a myriad of ways you can use this material. Here, the gigapixel images then become an interface which you can inhabit, but you can also do it on your phone. And this exhibition is now destined for the Buddha Vanam site near Nagarjunakonda in Telangana state. And it coincides with an emphasis on the possibilities for increasing spiritual tourism in India alongside the more established Buddhist circuits in the north. Telangana is in the south. Hyderabad is the capital. So I'm getting near the end. Intangible cultural heritage is defined by its reliance on tacit or embodied knowledge systems. Hong Kong is an extraordinary reservoir of intangible heritage, primarily of Hakka people, and including some of the most prominent martial artists in the world. This living heritage, made internationally so famous by Jackie Chan, Gordon Liu, and Hong Kong cinema, is now in danger of becoming lost. We've been working with 33 elite masters for the last 12 years, and this living archive is a 4D typology, which is based on extensive motion capture, a host of green screen and high-speed video methods, comprised of 130 sets of empty hand and weapon sequences. We've captured so far about 65% of the repertoire, and we've had many exhibitions, I think 13 exhibitions. Just to show you briefly a couple of the things inside, a pose-matching installation. Visitors are invited to reenact the classic Kung Fu moves. The way for us to reread mocap's hidden traces is to perform or reenact the gesture on display. This is Lam Sai Wing. He was the first master to systematically document Kung Fu photography. So we have photos of him, we have hand drawings of him, and so we created a 3D model of him. Then we got his great-great-grandnephew, to whom he has handed down this lineage, put him in a motion capture studio, and then combined the model with the motion capture data. This is iron wire boxing. It's quite a strange archival object, a little bit DNA, a little bit digital. Stands life-size in the galleries. And this installation is a 6-sided rear-projected 3D system that allows visitors to walk around and view the masters from any point of view. It's an interactive where the various kung fu moves can be reinterpreted through a series of motion over time analysis. This is speed on the body at any moment in time, a typical particle simulation. And we describe this as corporeal, gestural, haptic writing, which recognizes motion capture as a continuous topological model which allows for the easier retainment of the effective qualities of movement. So, to conclude, one of the projects I'm looking after at EPFL is the EPFL Pavilions. It's an amplifier for art and science and society. And the Pavilions blends experimental curatorship and contemporary aesthetics with open science, digital humanism, and emerging technologies. Just a few of the more recent exhibitions: Nature of Robotics, An Expanded Field, Deep Fakes, Art in Its Double, Cosmos Archaeology, Explorations in Time and Space, Lighten Up on Biology and Time, and Cyber-Physical Architecture in Real Time. And about to arrive is Musica Ex Machina, machines thinking musically. So I'm going to take you back to Deep Fakes, Art in Its Double as a way of conclusion. I'll read a curatorial text, but it looks at what's at stake in power, digital transformation, and museums. Deepfakes Art in Its Double explores how today's technologies coalesce to replicate cultural artifacts with ultimate fidelity. Simultaneously as algorithms and computer vision reperform and reprocess the digitally visible, they're exposing the optical unconscious of art, calling us to re-examine once again objecthood itself. Remediated through participatory interfaces such as mixed, augmented, and virtual realities, the exhibition created new performative platforms for the complex archetypes that emerge out of computational practices as they intersect with art heritage. 21 installations were equally focused on affirming and activating visitors' sensory experiences, while also grappling with the critical implication of digital materiality that objects possess in post-original form. Cultural deepfakes, as I came to call them, have manifest significance. They're technologically empowered to offer forensic insights into invisible dimensions, generating unforeseen hypotheses and connections. These art science phenomena also propagate powerful auras which rise to the surface entangled with the effective qualities of the originating sources. Such augmented replicas are able to draw us into unparalleled tactility with the textures, patinas, and geometries of their counterparts. With its propensity for peripheral vision, machine learning has amplified the possible futures for curatorial and artistic practices, antagonizing outdated notions of authority, authenticity, and access. These practices are generating perpetually new archival entities, concurrently formed and formless. Digital facsimiles also decolonize matter as they defy hegemonic narrative, helping to liberate things from their colonial entrapment, confronting authoritative discourse, historical sedimentation, and contested social relations. In cases of heritage at risk due to warfare, iconoclasm, and climatic catastrophe, digital copies have enabled communities to become more resilient to loss. They can provide reservoirs of cultural memory and instruments for those on the margins to speak back to their oppressors. Encryption of digital counterparts in place of originals is exploding systems and codes of ownership, custodianship, and repatriation. The accumulation and exploitation of digital patrimonial and cultural capital by technological elites unnervingly reenacts colonial constructs. Synchronously, new forms of cryptographic control, such as NFTs, are being enabled for the network circulation of art. But promoting the blockchain as a potential dominion of arbitrary value is a hallmark of the intensification of late capitalism's newest investment for its enmeshed cultural objects, rather than their deappropriation in the commons. Deepfake's art in its double is a cumulative narrative that embarks on these cross-cutting themes, traversing the simulacrum, mirror worlds, digital twins, cryptocurrency, and machine intelligence, while engaging with issues of mimesis, reenactment, memory, and decolonization. The exhibition cycles us through some of the antitheses around which the history of art has been circumscribed, as postmodern recedes, taking with it the assumed meaning of things. Cultural deepfakes become a central pivot for this dialectic. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Sarah Kenderdine, pour ce panorama vaste, peut-être un peu vertigineux. Je ne sais pas si tout le monde est resté tout à fait dans le sens. C'est très impressionnant. Je vous laisse prendre votre casque pour les questions. J'imagine que les pistes qui ont été évoquées, vertigineuses, comme je le disais, suscitent chez vous, gens des musées, beaucoup de questions. Il y a 2 micros, on a une dizaine de minutes pour partager nos interrogations sur ce monde dématérialisé. Et vous pouvez lever la main si vous avez des questions. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez, j'entends du brouhaha. Voilà, là il y a une question juste au 3e rang. En tout cas, on entend que ça suscite des questions que vous posez à vos voisins, voisines. Peut-être que vous pouvez nous les adresser directement. On vous écoute, peut-être vous pouvez vous présenter. Merci.
Hi, thank you for a fascinating talk. My name is Claire Fitzgerald. I'm head curator at the Ariana Museum in Geneva. My question was from a sustainability standpoint.
Sure.
So that's something that we have to be quite cautious of as museums in terms of exhibition production. And so in terms of the impact from a sustainability standpoint, or the technology and or the data that you're generating, and the way this is being produced and stored. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. So I was recently asked to be on a panel with a lady from Sustainability and Museums, and I said no. But there are several aspects to it. So digital objects do not require to be flown from one venue to another. The reduction in stress on sites is enormous through a one-to-one scale immersive experience of that place. So there are many conservation and, I guess, sustainability benefits from the digital and the circulation and the access and exposure to this material. On the negative side, it's true that, and with the advent of artificial intelligence type technologies, we use large clusters of computers all the time. The work that's going on in the computing revolution is also one that addresses sustainability. So with quantum computers and things like this. So there also with storage is another topic. So the Montreux Jazz that I showed, they recently encoded Deep Smoke Over the Water by Deep Purple and Miles Davis's Tutu into synthetic DNA. It means that the entire archive can be stored, 11,000 hours, in a grain of sand, the size of a grain of sand. It means all the data of the world fits inside a suitcase. It's stable, theoretically, for 5,000 years, and you can de-encode it and listen to it, because we do that at the pavilions. So there are these, in parallel with these developments, these extraordinary opportunities, so long as we're awake to take them.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres mains qui se lèvent? Moi, j'ai l'impression qu'il y a quand même une question qui se pose juste pour faire écho à ce que nous disait tout à l'heure Neil MacGregor sur l'émotion ressentie par les étudiants indiens quand ils se retrouvent face à une statue antique, grecque, pour de vrai, cette matérialité, mais aussi cette unicité, cette émotion qu'on peut avoir de déposer nos yeux sur un objet réel sur lequel des yeux, il y a 2000 ou 3000 ans, se sont déjà posés. Comment est-ce que vous rêvez de supplanter, de remplacer cette émotion-là? Est-ce qu'il y a un peu cette volonté magique comme ça de remplacer l'émotion directe?
I think we work hard to amplify emotions in the digital. I think it's Bruno Latour and Adam Lowe, they talk about the migration of aura from a real object now to its copy. Yeah? So it's already left. Aura is already gone from the real thing. I prefer to talk of like a proliferation of aura. It's an amplification of potentiality of an object from many different perspectives that will enhance an affective, emotional response. And it's very clear that it does. I mean, that we also do an enormous amount of evaluations. So these are very powerful systems. And they're treated very lightly. You know, there's no didactic material in them. We don't label everything. You know, it's a very, in a way, anti-curatorial approach, but it builds on massive amount of scholarship to get to that point, what to have in and what to have out. So it's this layering and the distribution and the access that's really critical for the future of museums.
Merci pour cette réponse. J'ai cru voir des mains quand même, ici. Ah, alors, comme on vous a déjà entendu tout à l'heure, je propose qu'on prenne d'abord la question qui est en haut, dans une juste répartition de la parole. Un monsieur, voilà.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Sure.
Which paves the way to so many possibilities. I'm a student here in modern history at the University of Geneva, so I have nothing to do for the moment with museology. I wanted to ask you something about that during your speech there were multiple moments during which you were showing these amazing slides where we could see so many representations, but it was quite intense and quite dense. And I was wondering whether it was thought through to represent this high density of visual media in a more ADHD friendly way, if I may say. I don't know if you see exactly what I'm trying to say, but what I'm trying to say is that, for example, with the Victoria browser, data browser,
Sure.
there's so many things to see. It's super dense, super overwhelming. How do you adapt that to populations which can be easily overwhelmed by
Sure.
so much media? Thank you.
Absolutely. So the HCI, human-computer interaction side of it, the way that these things move, the way you navigate the data tends to mitigate that feeling of overwhelmingness. And, we've done massive number of studies, on these systems, and we often have old people, especially older women, who come back to a system and they'll use it for over an hour. These are people who are not necessarily into the frenzy of media, and it's the ability to control your gaze that is the primary characteristic there, and the speed at which you do that is completely on your control. So you can dwell, you can move, and you can fly. It's a whole range of strategies. And of course, when it gets represented in video, we're trying to pack all the different modes in one 1 minute movie. So it tends to look maybe more overwhelming than it is to be there, for sure. You have to move slowly in these systems. Almost all of them are stereographic. So you have 3D glasses on, and 3D graphics don't like to go fast. So It's a pace and a modality which is really carefully thought through with lots of evaluations. So it's just, packing together a slide deck like this might make it look more frenzied than it really is. Although I do want to bring them all together and tour them all around the world in one big frenzied show, that would be great.
La parole encore peut être donnée. Vous aviez une question ici. On vous écoute.
Elle n'est pas indispensable. J'en ai deux très courts. I have two short questions. First, you showed us the fresco of a battle, a medieval battle, but there was also sound. On which basis did you recreate the sound? That's my first question.
Sure. So we're working with, it's the first pass on the sound, and we're working with obviously a composer, but also a series of scholars in Germany who is they have an ERC in studying medieval battle sounds. So it's a major research project. They don't create sound themselves, they study what it would have sounded like from manuscripts. So this is a deep historical research that they are doing. And we work with their scholarship to recreate sound.
And the second question about deep fakes. Without looking into complex images, you can show an apple falling from a tree and an apple going back to the tree. And you could have the public toy on that about science, nature, art, what is for true, what is, etc. How would you comment about such simple examples which could trigger reflection on science and art?
Right. So that show was very strong conjunction of the sciences of the digital world, the computational world, and all its affordances at very high fidelity, and art. And the modalities of experiencing this were a bit going back to this question of being able to explore this object, a physical object, through digital means. So it's that art science brought together in a particular way, in this case, very particular way. It's not hiring a bunch of artists, although there were many artists in that show, to investigate that specific issue of how you engage with these digital materials in new ways.